Hello and welcome to this open source live code hangout. Today we're going to continue a draft pull request to reduce the amount of search page usage, trying to basically optimize the app, and our search page is one of the least performant pages. We don't have a lot of control over that. It's just a complicated query that needs to span multiple tables. So rather than try to optimize it, which I don't know where to begin, I would just rather we not use it for certain things. Part of this issue is that we're getting hit by a lot of crawlers and bots, and I don't know what the purpose of them is. Some of them are from Microsoft and Google, I think, but they're really causing an excessive amount of traffic on our site and queries against the database, as well as expenses for example, our analytics. We have this open source privacy preserving analytics service, but we're paying for their commercial hosting, and we've exceeded our yearly budget of 600,000 hits in less than a month, basically, or maybe about a month since we got the service. And it's because we're being hammered, apparently. And I installed a Cloudflare layer sort of proxy service to help us mitigate some of these, and that's where the issue first became apparent. So in addition to this pull request, I'm going to look at some more strategies about how we could just throttle excessive users of the site, typically the bots. And I'm thinking of some kind of generic things, like if some bot is making more than, let's say, if some IP address maybe is making more than 500 requests a month, maybe we would block them for a month. Or if they're making more than, it's hard to say, but 50 requests a day, something in, more of the extreme percentile usage, they would be blocked for a day. That wouldn't help against bots who are using multiple IP addresses. So it's not really a trivial thing. And the main thing is I don't want the users to be affected by it. We have put some non-invasive mitigations in place for example, on our forms, in addition to a CAPTCHA, which has essentially eliminated our form spam, which is good. But these crawlers are a different type of traffic, so I'm not sure what we can do here. Let's continue on with this pull request though, and essentially we're changing some lines of code. We're adding a new view, and I want to make sure in a new template. I just want to make sure that we test this list view in the get context functions, so we have coverage there. So what we'll do is use ChatGPT, and since this is only around 70 lines of code, I can paste the whole thing in and explain that we want to make a test suite. And it's a list view, so please help me make a comprehensive test suite for the following Django list view. And it's going to look at across our functions and look at the possible code paths, and somehow statistically it's able to infer the types of cases we would need to do. So we'll have a setup and tear down, which is a common pattern. So creating a comprehensive test suite for your Django tagged page list view involves testing various aspects of the view, including its ability to handle different types of data and edge cases. Here's a breakdown of your tests you can implement. Test, setup, and tear down. Create a test database and populate it with sample data for a library item, magazine article, news item, WF page, and tag. Test the query set, tag filtering. Test if the view correctly filters items based on the given tag. Make sure they're ordered correctly. Make sure the query sets are combined. Make sure the test context data retrieves the tag, and that the pagination works. So we'll need to probably create a number of items so pagination is tested. Ensure that the template renders the correct tagged page list HTML, and look for edge cases and error handling. No tag provided. Invalid tag. Invalid tag should just not return any results. It would be an empty query set. Invalid could also mean there's some illegal characters in there, perhaps. I don't know. Integration with other components, user experience to view the test the view with different user inputs, different page numbers in the query string, responsive and browser compatibility testing. Wow. Tools and frameworks, Django test case, writing a test. Here's an example of how you might write a test for the tag filtering functionality. So it's good. We've got some code already, and including the setup. So what I'll do though is I'll take a step back and let's get a comprehensive setup here. It's tricky though. You got to think of this more strategically. But yeah, this is a sketch anyway. I could include the number of, create the number of library items and articles, etc. That would cause our pagination, to break across the query set. So in other words, we have a 10 item paginator. So this would be a bit of a comprehensive setup. That's good stuff. Hydrate. So I should mention our what are they called? Factories. Let me double check here. So essentially, we're needing to create library items, magazine articles, news items, and pages. And I think after going through a lot of these tests, we've created factories for pretty much all of the apps that should let us create the leaf nodes and automatically generate the tree structure that holds the leaves up, because that's a bit tricky for you. In order to be able to create, for example, an article, you have to have created the magazine issue. So we got, and the WF pages. Did I create a factory? I don't know if we need slug. Let's see. So let's just test this factory method out and see if I can just create a WF page development database. Go back into the shell. Make our import happen. Create one of those. Field cannot be null. Path. Okay, so this is the fundamental problem. This path is a path within a tree-like structure that's provided by Django Treebeard. And so every time we want to create a model instance that inherits from the Treebeard, which is inherently actually what the Wagtail page model is based on, we have to put it in an existing tree. So what we've done elsewhere, look at the magazine factories, for example, or news factories maybe, but let me see, magazine index page. What we had to do on the create, homepage. So I think that's about it. Class method on the create. And that's pretty close, but actually I need to import homepage. Is that correct? Page. And import these type annotations. We're trying to be pretty good about that. So let's see if this works. I think I have to exit the shell and hop back in. Yeah, so now we have okay, great. We have a WF page factory. We've got news factory, magazine factory, in no particular order. Magazine, maybe I should alphabetize them. Yeah, and hopefully again I can just focus at the leaf node. but that's not the case. We have magazine issues, but not magazine articles. So what we'll do is create class magazine article factory, model, Django title, slug issue subfactory create, make sure the issue exists. So looking good, looking good. Hopefully we'll get this to work. Let's exit out of here. Run this shell. And again, this has to construct a whole page tree. Excuse me. So this is tricky because there is a relationship here, but it probably isn't a property. So let's just see what happens if I comment that out. And I'm just going to see, do I have to reload this every time? Do I have to exit out and re-import that? Of course I do. I don't know if there's a way to refresh the context here. That'd be nice. Maybe it would if I would have waited just a second longer. Department cannot be null. So we need a magazine department. Factory, which also needs the magazine. So yeah, we need just have to, everything goes into the magazine index page. I should check my code pretty closely when I'm reviewing it. Otherwise, this is magazine issue. Okay, let's try this again. Right, now that I've got the department, then I can do the department field here. I'll delete that. It's a subfactory, so it'll create the department. Boom, we got it. And what was the last one? Pages, news, pages, magazine, articles, and something else. Library items. And okay, this is a bit tricky, but I think I should paste in the factory the relevant parts, which is essentially the title. So our context won't get really big, but it'll be big enough. Problem is the tags. I'm just remembering I've got to get the tags. To create a test suite that utilizes the given factories and tests in the tagged page list view, you need to follow these steps. Set up the test data, create instances of library item, magazine article, news item, and WF page. Test the query set. Verify that the views query set includes one of each factory type and that they are sorted alphabetically by title. So here's the implementation. So we're going to get our imports there, which I believe, let me double check. Okay, let's hop over here. Tags, views, tests is empty. So grab all of our imports, and since I gave it those factory paths earlier, it was able to do those for me correctly. I don't have a tag factory. That's an interesting suggestion, but I think that we can just use strings. So it's going to essentially set us up a tag from tag models, and it's going to create against the class. Interesting. I don't remember that. I think we usually use self, so not a class method. I wonder if this is going to work. So let's copy it in. All right. And I got to get the view name. So the view is called, sorry, I got to get the URL, tag page list. Tags colon tagged page list. Let's go back up to the tests.py. It's kind of opened in the middle there. I think I would put the URL in the setup data. Tags equals self tag. Or class plug. Self URL. Just giving them a shared reference. So adding the URL and the setup test data. It's good practice. It simplifies the test methods by avoiding repetitive code. Okay, so it's just going to give me the whole thing again, but that's okay. A library item, magazine article. So it's going to test some sorting. News item in WFP. Tags, tag page list, tag slug tags. Very cool. So now we can take a look at the test, see if it runs. Passes. They pass. So, oops. So run the tags test. See what happens. We'll clear the database now. I think I've run some migrations recently, and I don't know how old this test database is. So at least in this session, I'll clear it once. Then I'll try to run keepdb next time. But yeah, I don't like to do this every time because it takes so long to get a new database instance. All right, so there we go. We got our first problem: magazine page index create. Now this weird thing is this is coming from within the factory. And this was probably the one that I just created. So yeah, factory. That should work. Now I think I'll keep DB here so it doesn't have to rerun those migrations. Because we have a factory here. Magazine issue factory, magazine index page factory, which does have the create method. That was auto-generated code, and I didn't carefully review it. I sort of just ran with it. And I tested it by creating a magazine article that for some reason didn't need. It must have, I don't know how it had a magazine issue already. Okay, argument of paginator page with elided page range is not iterable. Member not in container, oikesti. This is an internal thing happening here. Type argument of paginator page with elided range is not iterable. So that's like a none issue. Or in containers, looking in the container. So let me just check the tests here. Okay, I'm gonna close down the factories until we know we need them again, just so I don't have so many tabs open. Now we'll take a look at our tests, and I think so. If we look at what are we trying to assert here? Tests line 36, library item, query sets. So we're looking in a query set. Now, the paginated items is not a query set. That was the thing. But it has like pages. Oops, dot pages. I think it is that we do use. For example, in the template for a paginated item. Page. Let's see if this helps. Yeah, page 101 is kind of strange. Okay, so here we go. I didn't give the context that our view is using a helper function, and this returns. Okay, it's a bespoke structure, so there's no way that GPT could have gotten this one. So how am I going to improve this? So essentially, this returns as paginator with a lighted page range, boy, which contains a page, which is a sequence. That's the weird thing. It would be nice not to have this bespoke method and just to have the ellipses work already, but so this is emulating the paginator. It's kind of a paginator, and in a way I could inherit from paginator. We're just adding a new member. So what I'll do is I'll give the error and here's our get paginated items. Kind of just, it's only like 40 lines, so we might as well do the whole thing. So the error you're encountering is because the paginator page with a lighted page range object returned by your get paginated items function is not directly iterable. This is a common issue when dealing with paginated query sets in Django. The paginator thing contains a paginated page object which holds the items, but it itself is not a collection of items. Okay, so it's like a generator. To fix this issue, you need to modify your test to access the items in the page attribute of the paginator object. Here's how you can update your test. So we get the context, then we get the query set items object list. That's cool. Then we'll make sure it's indented correctly. Library item not found. So the tricky part, well, this is wrong. So let me just see. I would like to just not have this literal string and be able to get that from the tag. So now we might need to run this in a debugger, but let's see if GPT spots any omissions, and we'll step through it. So yeah, this could be, the view is working with manual testing though. So the query set might not return the data. Let the views get query set. The database transaction might not get committed. Methods are run isolated from one another. Any changes made in the database on one test will not affect the other methods. Yeah, so if we're not mutating the objects, we should try to use the class method. If your test method needs a fresh environment and you want to ensure that changes by one test do not interfere with others, use setup. And your tests involve modifying objects, use setup. Given the nature of your test, checking the presence of items in a query set, setup test data should generally be sufficient. However, if you're finding inconsistencies or if your methods are altering the state of the test data in a way that could affect other tests, switching to setup could be a good strategy. So it just shows me how to do that, but I think, yeah. And it didn't mention anything with my class. Oh yeah. Tag slugs approach, so that seems legit. So maybe like one test, it's kind of weird, but I've been doing this convention where I'll set up some data and then I'll have a test that tests the setup data to make sure things are just how we expect them to be. Sort of like, I learned this one especially in the app I work on in my day job, because a lot of times we can't really run things locally, and the testing environment is really kind of a bit awkward. So it's like one of the ways I can have visibility into if things are working as expected is just to test the tests data. Yeah, and then we'll just need our little imports, and we'll comment this one out for now while we just run that first method. Then I'll be able to run these in a debugger here in a moment. There we go. So that got right to, I think, the heart of the issue. The test failure you're encountering suggests that the library item instance is not being tagged as expected in your setup probably none of them are being tagged as expected then. This issue could be due to several reasons, such as the factory setup. The way the factory creates the library item instance might not be properly handling the tagging. Tag assignment. There might be an issue with how the tag is being assigned to the library item instance. Database transactions. Sometimes the database transactions and tests can behave unexpectedly. Okay, it's probably one of these two. Here's an example of how you might modify your tests to create and tag a library item instance directly. The problem with this is I have to scaffold the whole tree. So we want to use the factory. We want to use those factories. Let's see though, if it's just the library item, for example, because that's the one that's kind of not coming through. And there could be some differences in how we're handling the tags. I think I remember the library item having they all have an intermediary collection, but I think we defined it explicitly in the library item case, but the other ones might just be using the, oops, wrong button, regular django-taggit field, where you just define the field on the model and you don't say the through. Let's open that back up. So I'm just going to see if I can isolate this down to one model. Keep database though. Save some time. Oh, you can't see. Yes. So. I think this is the first time I've really ran a test against the tags. Non-trivial stuff. First, let's run in a shell, right? So, for example, and not models of the factories. Oh, you gotta do this. Yeah, that's just a class. So forgot this, that, and the other thing. Now we have an article. Compare various house collection. It worked. Let's try this. Article 2. I think it's the article save method that we'll need to run after adding the tag. So we'll do article 2, subsection 1. Okay, so you don't have to save it. So that is working. Well, that's cool. So I know I can just assign it a string, right? I don't have to use this sort of test instance. So what I can do is just say common tag. And then down here I'll just say tag. Yeah, now this is just a string, so it will slugify it. So I could use common space tag, and it should still come out as, you know, common tag here. Quargs common. That's the problem though. It won't. I don't see why this would be necessary, but work our way through it. Yeah, so that worked. All right, so this should pass, and the library item thing should pass, but, so these will all pass. Then, can I use self? I don't know if this will work, I don't think so. Well, it shouldn't matter, because it looks like I'm using query setup here. Let's try with the string. I don't see why that would help, but if it's some property that's not on the tag, yeah, it's an empty list, so this part is not working. The issue you're facing is likely due to the way the tags are being added to the library item instance. The tags add method typically expects tag instances, not strings. No, I've tested it. I've tested this. This is wrong. But if that tag, so nonetheless, let's get our imports real quick here. I think we're just going to switch to the class-based instance method approach. let's just do article. If it works, then we're good to go. Okay, so I think it's given that the tagging works correctly in the Django shell but not in your setup test data method, it's possible that the issue lies in how the test environment interacts with the database. This can be due to several reasons, including database transaction behavior and tests, the order of the operations, or the way the test database is set up and torn down. Commit transactions. Try to forcing the database to commit after adding the tags. Moving tagging to a test method. So use setup. Let's try that. The factories are working good. I just used it here. Although this is less efficient, using setup will ensure that each test method gets a fresh set of data and might behave differently with respect to the database transactions. That's really strange if that's the case, but okay. But let's try this approach. So basically, copy that and comment out all of this. Then essentially uncomment this and assign the tags here, including this dedent, indent here, tag that, remove this just so, and self tag is still used. So running it now, no, it's not working. So let's try switching to the setup method. This is a bummer. It's such a difficult test to write. Why is that? Ah, of course. My bad, my bad. Huh, still an empty list. What the heck? Tried destroying the test database, but this shouldn't be the factor. So we'll start here. This should be a fairly, well, I should have commented this out, but dang it. Rebuild the database. Okay, so that runs. So this is almost its own test. Sweet. First we see that things were made, but yeah, the test should pass. Hey, making progress. Woohoo! Okay, now we want to go on to the view tests. That's fantastic news. Your test suite is now correctly set up and successfully verifies both the creation of the tagged items and the proper association between the tags and those items. This is a solid foundation for further testing your tagged page list view. Test the query set content and order. Test pagination. We'll just start one at a time, one at a time. I will grab a little drink of water real quick. Be right back. All right, so it looks like we have a test it wrote for us. It's going to test the content that all the expected items tagged with specific tag are present in the query set. Makes sense. And that the order of the items is the correct. So we're going to get the URL request from the response from the URL. We get the context, check the query set objects list, and make sure that when we sort the titles, interesting, that the titles are all there, expected titles sorted, and that they assert equal asserts the sorting order. That's cool. This is good stuff, man. Good stuff. So I'm going to kind of throw this old one away. We're going to go through this one at a time and get these other tests written with the help of GPT 4.2. Roger. Okay, found two tests. Two tests, Sonny. See, we're going to run them both. It's a bit slower because we had to run the setup each time. And I forgot to keep DB. This ectoplasm is too good. I drink it too fast. No. Okay. So, lists differ. A library item, magazine article, news item, WF page. Make sure the URL is... This is a bit tricky. The URL's got to be correct. First, let's make sure we get something back. I think the URL is wrong. What are we calling this in the URL? Tag. And what do we call it here? urls.py tag. Okay, so again, taking it step by step, and we get this. So there don't seem to be any paginated items. Doesn't have anything. How have we tested pagination before? On the search page, tests. We set up a bunch. Here we call it just page.page. So length. So django-taggit. Notice we're not using taggit here. Oh, it's search is a different thing. Ah, this is so frustrating. Now, self to tag model. So perhaps the tag doesn't have a primary key. Yeah, it was weird. That was weird. This is interesting. Let's see if GPT picks up on that. The issue you encountered is due to the trying to add a tag that hasn't been saved to the database. In Django, before you can establish a relationship like adding a tag to an article, the related object must be saved and have a primary key assigned. This is why you're getting the type error. Model instances without the primary key. Here's the correct sequence of steps you should follow. Create and save the tag. Before you can add the tag to the article, you need to save the instance to the database, which assigns it to a primary key. Add the tag to the article. Once the tag is saved and has a primary key, you can then add it to the article. Here's the revised code. Yeah, so kind of what we determined here. Excellent. Maybe this is getting us closer. I don't know. I don't know. Just see what it intuits about this. I don't know if it's actually thinking or something's happening. Intuition? Does GPT have an intuition? What does it have? A hallucination? Is it a perpetual hallucination that is sometimes reliable or often not reliable? The setup method in your tagged page list view topic is almost correct, but there's a small redundancy you can remove. When you use the tag objects created, automatically saves the tag instance. Oh yeah, okay, of course. Therefore, calling self tag saved, that's the subtle difference. But yeah, that's what we're doing wrong. All right, dang, that's set up. Yada yada. Looks like your tagging is now working correctly. When you add the tag to the article and then you query tags all, you're getting the expected output, which shows that the tag you added. This confirms that the tag has been successfully associated with the article instance. The successful tagging in Django shell should mirror the behavior in your test environment as well. Now that you've confirmed the tagging process works, you can apply the same logic to your test setup to ensure that your test data is correctly tagged. Your setup method in tag page list view should function correctly as the factories in your models. Yeah, and plus we have a test here. Right here, where the tag is in the tags. So I believe it boils down to the URL. Okay, to the view or the URL. Getting context data. Getting query sets. So our view, I think just try this one more time. See if we get some print statements. So yeah, it did work. Getting query set, getting context data. 04. Getting query set gets called twice. I think I have a debug helper here. I don't have it set up, but I can edit it. Oh, I do. So this is tags, tests, this one. Keep DB. I can put breakpoints through our view, essentially. What's going on here? Let's check out the context. That way I can see what the tag slug is, the tag name, page number, the result, the paginated items, all that good stuff. So if I run this, it'll run our test suite in it, or a case in a debugger. So it's not paginated because there's only a few. So the tag name is common tag. That's actually, yeah, expected. Tag slug. So it's able to get the tag out. That's a good sign. And then we have paginated items with length 7. Interesting. Why did it have a length? And can you, in a debugger context, open a shell and try some stuff? Like the debug console. Something simple. Yeah, there we go. Yes, very good. All right, so I think it's because it's part of context. It's a paginator, and we are looking in our test, I forget, object list. Cool. So that is a good find. The view works when I manually test it. So we'll just give it a little bit of shared context here. So this shell, I wish Linux wouldn't make you do Control-Shift-V. It's like such a hangover from Unix epoch era, day one. From your output, it seems like you're trying to inspect the contents of a paginated page in your Django view, but encountering some issues. Let's break down the key. Object list, you got the error because the correct attribute to access object of in a page object is object list, not objects list. Ah, okay. Yeah, okay. It's empty. Which is what the problem's been the whole dang time. Let's put the breakpoint here. We'll just check all those. Alright, so let's rerun it again. I didn't mean to put a breakpoint there. That's okay. Tag item exists. It's right there. Ah, so all of our query sets are empty. Yeah. And what does the tag have? A common tag, and it's able to fetch it. So that it's not the view. The view is wired up correctly. It's passing common tag. If I go to the debug console and I say library items, or just library item, yeah. So it gets it. It gets the library item, a library item, creates it. Test setup data, not here, not in the context. When I run in the Django debug shell, this is so strange. It's intriguing that the library item instance has the associated tag in the test setup data, but not in test query set content and order test. This discrepancy can be due to a few reasons. Test isolation and database transactions. Django's test case wraps each test method in a database transaction and rolls back at the end of each test to isolate tests from each other. If the test query set and content order runs before the test setup data, changes made in the test setup data, like adding test tags. Now we didn't do it there though. Just for clarification. Setup method execution. The setup method is executed before every test method. Ensure that there's no code in setup or any other part of your test that might inadvertently remove the tag or alter the thing. Here's our setup. Stay here though. Order test execution. The order of the test execution is not guaranteed. All right. If you have other tests that modify the tags or the library item instances, it could affect this query set. Database caching issues. Sometimes, especially with complex relations like many-to-many fields, tags in this case, there can be caching issues. Make sure that you're not encountering a situation where the test database isn't properly reflecting the state of relationships. Okay, so maybe I do need to clear it each time. Inspect the setup method. Make sure the setup method correctly sets the data for each test. Isolate the test. Temporarily comment out other test methods and run only that one to see if the issue persists. Refresh from the database. Try refreshing the library item instance from the database before checking its tags. Ah, I wonder. But this one passes. This passes. Honestly, I want to include test coverage in this pull request, but I'm not going to block the pull request from merging because of this weirdness. This is just, I don't know of a better word for it, but this is not working. There's something weird. Yeah, maybe there's something obvious that I'm doing wrong, or completely wrong, or just misunderstanding. But why this one works and the other doesn't? So let's just go back here. So I'm just going in circles here. Already tested the factory behavior. I've tested this with factories. I've created them. The tags work. I don't see why that would matter here. No, that's just complete guess. So I'll just say these test pass. I mean, it makes sense. It's just testing the same thing. Sounds like the setup method is working correctly, and each of the instances properly tagged. Yeah. It seemed promising. Query set item. Double check this, but all of the library item, all of the inferring that there are other ones are there. I can test it. It's just but again, this has already been an hour and a half. At this point, the unit test is not worth the fight. It's a fairly important feature in terms of reducing our database load, but it's not a main avenue of navigation for the site. It's a side route, sort of. People can navigate by tag and share tag pages and stuff. I have an issue with the view's get query set method filtering or retrieving the items. The method's logic doesn't align correctly with the test setup. It could lead to an empty query set. Yeah, makes sense. So oh yeah. So in the view, I have the tag item, and essentially the tag is the slug. Let's see. Whoops. Gosh dang it. Right, they're the same, and that's how it's able to fetch it, right? That's how it's able to fetch it here. Yeah, so we get a tag item. But it's not about filtering. Interesting. Browser just went to sleep. Well, that's a good sign. I'm not going to battle this anymore. It's too much frustration. The pull request works as it is. I'll roll back these changes. It works with manual testing. Let me just see what we've got here. I will commit these factory methods. This was just not working. I don't know what's the deal. Those aren't meaningful tests. These are just kind of debugging things, getting context, printing this context. Discard those. And I guess it doesn't hurt to have these factories. Perhaps for a later date. Try it again. Okay, no problem. I'm gonna take a little bit of a break and reassess my plans. It's almost 7 o'clock. I don't mind wasting a couple hours here and there battling some strange coding issues. It just happens this way sometimes. But I'd like to kind of work on something else, another task for Western friend, or else maybe some C++ code. So I might take a little bit of a break and regain my thoughts, and perhaps take another issue here. I'll just be right back. All right, thanks for your patience. One thing did occur to me. Bringing all this back up, when I tested the setup, I'm testing against the class instances, right? But in our code, it's failing. So the test setup data is saying, hey, self-tag exists and the magazine is associated with it. I don't have that test. So what I'm going to do actually is get magazine. I'll get the article or the library item, get the first, and the magazine article, get the first. Here's on, get the first, and WF page, then assert tags in that. There we go. Because that's what we're failing on the server in the view. If this passes it, I'm going to be really just, I don't know. But essentially this is allowing us to query it from the collection. And we'll stop the debugger because this one I can just run in the terminal and keep db the first time. Yeah, there we go. So this I'm able to diagnose it. Okay, which is good. I've isolated it to a test case. We can just kind of figure it out in the testing environment. Good. I'm just going to give this much context to a fresh ChatGPT conversation, GPT-4. And this could just be, so the factory should return an instance. And I've tested that the factory instances work. And I can actually write that in a test. Alright, so what I'm going to do then is get the library item. Now I'm going to, well, yeah. Magazine article, news on, page, add that. Let's just see that this passes. Not the most exciting coding in the world, I understand. The issue you're experiencing, the test setup data method, it seems to relate to the way the test database is interacting with your objects and their tags. In your test case, you're creating instances of library item and magazine article, news item, and page associated with the tag. However, when you're retrieving those objects from the database to check their tags, the association appears to be missing. Several factors are an issue. Database transaction. Django's test framework uses database transactions to roll back the database to its original state after each test. If your test setup and actual tests are running in different transactions, the changes made in the setup might not be visible in a test. Factory behavior. The factory's library item, factory, etc. might not be handling the many-to-many relationships correctly. Ensure that your factories are set up to handle many-to-many relationships properly. Cool, could be that. Make sure that so to diagnose and fix this issue, make sure that the creation of objects and the assertion checks are happening within the same transaction scope. Django's test case wraps each test method in a transaction and rolls back the transaction after each test. So changes made in one test won't affect others. Review the factory implementation. Double check how your factories are implemented. Ensure that they handle the creation of many-to-many relationships correctly. So how do I do that? I think I did that here, right? I create this thing, I add a tag. That's basically it. So we're going back through that collection. Then we'll test the setup data again. So maybe we're zeroing in on the factory. Okay, so this one fails. All right, so there we go. That's the problem. The whole problem has been the factory. If your factors aren't associating the tag correctly with the instances they create, there are, oh yeah, I'll just redo this. All right. So in this one, I really didn't even use the setup method, sort of. Okay, sub.tag should just be tag. Except for that one. All right, so we're gonna run this as one test. What's going on here? I think what's it? Annotation. Oh, no, it's that. That's the problem. Indeed. Okay, good. So it's failing. That's the same thing. Now, let's try the saving. I think I had arrived at that a little bit earlier. I touched on that. I need to save it. All right then. No need. It's weird. In the shell, I didn't have to save it or something. There was some weirdness that led me to believe I didn't need to save it after each one. But now we know. Knowing is half the battle, just half. Now we'll get this, and then I don't know if this is still ready. At least this far should work. We should have the right amount of items now that they've been saved. Oh man, goodness. I knew it was something silly that I was overlooking, and feeling frustration, just needed to step away for a minute. And it looks like now we are, I'll just get these, the comments are left, but the, oh, I see what happened. The indentation's wrong. The indentations are off. Yeah, no problem. All right, cool. So sometimes things get frustrating, man. And little changes can be right in front of you, but so far away. So yeah, we've got our working tests. Or that was for one thing that I wanted to test, the order and the, hey, but that's a really big thing. That the query set content in order is correct. Really, that's the main use case. I think there's a couple others. Pagination. All right. Okay, so now this is working. So, yeah, this is the first conversation. Let's see if I can just do this with Copilot. The pagination test is going to mean I need at least 10 items. So I would like to test that. So what I will do is I will call this it's mainly to set up query set and content order to distinguish it from the pagination test, which will need a sort of a different test case, right? Yeah, no, just test, and then it inherits from test case. Oh, okay, we got some suggestions there. So pretty close, but let's go back. Okay, so pagination requires at least 10 items. Just enter. So n equals 3. Now range is, let me just test this again. Okay, 0, 1, 2. So it will be 3. The tag is a requirement, so I might as well do that in the loop, right? Assign the tags. Yeah, just kind of use a little bit of spacing so I can see what's going on here. Did I commit my previous tests? No, didn't. Let's just do that. While I wasn't on a roll, I want to kind of commit the good stuff. Then we'll come back to this one. Cancel that. Had some linting. Let the CI run on that, but it was failing, not relating to tests, but relating to the code quality scanning that I will probably disable. Okay, now we're gonna get the URL. I see that. I don't have that, so let's just get that self URL right here. Yeah, and honestly, I should put that at the top of this setup function as well instead of the end, so it stands out a little bit. Right after I create the tag, we can see, okay, this is the URL we're going to be using, that tag slug, and the rest of the setup follows. All right, I think pagination to work, that's like it. You have to just kind of set up the data, test pagination, response, paginated item, answer equals 10. Interesting. That's a lot of assertions it made. I'll be surprised if all those pass. Yeah, I think it's just directly on. So I'll look at our template. Where are we getting the number of pages from? Paginator template. Page.paginator number of pages. That's one of the confusing things about the Django paginators, like got self-references or some kind of weirdness going on in there. And I think this should be only 2 pages. So we'll see about that. Maybe see if we give the property there. 3 is not equal to 2. Page, paginator, yeah, all right, cool. Number of pages. Yield. Hey, there you go, because it just didn't do the math up here, which is kind of cool. It's fine, you know, 4 times 3 is 12, and somehow the math was like kind of too abstract for as much as it gave me. So it already gave me quite a lot. Really remarkable how these can function. All right, so we've essentially shoved the paginator over to page, so I could have just called it paginator. Next page number. And again, it's just a page. And again, it's just a page. And then again, it's just a page, I think. Yeah, it's got to be page. Everything. So really, that's the paginator. This other thing is a class I wrapped around the paginator, and it's causing myself to be confused thoroughly. Yeah, empty page. Page number is less than 1. Which one was this? Let's see. So that number of pages passed. Let me just make this a bit easier to follow. We should be at the first page. Good. Then next page should be 2. Previous page number should be none. I think this is the one that failed. Well, I'll leave this one out of it, because this is already a pretty good test. And we sort of have it tested up here. I'll just take these 2 off. So this works. We've got an initial pagination thing. I think we're doing due diligence. It's not like perfect. There are some perhaps meaningful test cases where we've left off, but I don't want to test the whole paginator surface. To some extent, we can assume it works as long as we're checking our kind of like the specific context, which is like the number of pages we expect and things. Then we don't need like these comments, right? The code is comment, and the good thing about the code being the comment is code changes, comment changes, whereas that's not always the case when you change code and have a comment, you know, alongside the code, right? It's a little bit of a risk that the comment is not reflecting the status of the code anymore. I'll attempt to add one more test case inside of this test suite for the page number 2. That means we're going to sort of create the URL here with a query string argument page equals. So def test pagination second page. Wow. What? Okay, cool. Oh yeah, and this is the same too. Just not doing the math quite, which is all right. I mean, it did a lot already. Stuff that would baffle me, would confuse me for hours with only a minor incident. All right. All right, now this is good. I'll call this pull request done. D-U-N. My goodness, that was good stuff. About 2 hours in there. Over 2 hours, actually. I'm going to take a break. I'd like to continue. I'm going to take a walk in the nice snowy weather outside, refresh my brain, and I'd like to continue with some just kind of more casual exploration of audio synthesis with VCV rack. Yeah. Ding, ding, ding. But I just realized my face is mirrored so that I look that way. So the book is mirrored. Here, I'll hold it like that. Make it worse. Yep. It's a book about a topic that is dear to my heart called modular synthesis. You could also think of it in a particular manifestation called VCB rack. Super good. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. I'll be back after my walk. I'm going to work on some VCB rack. VCB rack. It's open source on GitHub. And it's basically a Eurorack simulator, and it lets you use these kind of normally what are hardware modules that kind of like are screwed into a rack interface, and you plug wires between them and they do different things, wild and crazy things. And there's some really cool people who are doing these crazy things. I like to do the things too, but basically it's all signals. It's just all simulated electricity, voltage, and that voltage is translated into knobs that turn. It's called control voltage. So instead of my hand turning the knob, the voltage turns the knob internally. It doesn't physically turn it, but in most cases, in any case, you plug the voltage in there. It'll either turn a knob, modulate it, or modulate the pitch. And this is called volt per octave. So every volt that increases, so 1 volt to 2 volts is an octave span, a musical octave. These are the two principal things that came together through pioneer Bob Moog. The volt per octave, I think, was only a Bob Moog thing, not a Don Buchla thing. I think Buchla had a different approach to the voltage and pitch relationship, but nonetheless, volt per octave and control voltage, the two paradigms came together, and the modular paradigm was born some 60 years ago. 50 years ago, and now we have a new generation coming around in the 1990s and just kind of exploding in popularity in the current times, called Eurorack. And so that's what this VCB rack is, a Eurorack simulator. So you don't have to actually own all this hardware, which frankly I'm trying to own less stuff, trying to dematerialize, and especially with supply chain constraints and global issues, pandemics, conflicts. I think less stuff is more. All these components have to be manufactured from rare earth minerals and use petroleum and ship them around and all that stuff. This concept of synthesis and modular synthesis is very interesting, so I'm glad we have a virtual way of doing it. So I can just use this materials I've already got, these electronics that have already been assembled and manufactured and transported, and they're already on my desk. I don't have to buy more stuff to share some creativity. So yeah, that's VC Rack in a nutshell. I will take a break and come back and we'll check out some more Rack, in particular how can you make your own modules, and maybe just another quick demo of like how does Rack work. Okay, so if you'd like to check out this pull request that we've got here, you can ignore the red X. That's coming from deep source. But anyway, here it is. I'll check the deep source error this morning to see what's going on, but I'll probably merge this soon. Pull request 1015, closing issue number 1014, to try to reduce our reliance on the search page in an effort to make our software a little bit more efficient, the resource usage is more efficient, reducing the resource consumption, and in response to excessive consumption from bots. I don't know what to do about the bots, but at least, we'll try to save some resources. All right, this has been a Live Code Hangout. Thanks for joining on Twitch. If you're stopping by on Twitter, let me know your thoughts. If you got any suggestions or projects you'd like to share, add a comment there, and I appreciate your time. Have a great day. See you around.